Ever feel like the world around you is moving too fast? Like every notification, every headline, every unexpected curveball throws you off balance? You're not alone. Chaos isn't just around us, it's inside us too. A swirling storm of distractions, stress, and uncertainty that makes it hard to think, let alone stay steady. But what if I told you there's a 2,000-year-old philosophy designed to anchor your mind, no matter how wild the storm gets? Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything's fine. It's about finding unshakable clarity in the middle of the mess. And today, we're diving into 34 Stoic Mantras, words to live by, straight from the ancient thinkers who mastered the art of mental resilience. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled an empire while writing some of history's most profound reflections on inner peace, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That's the heart of Stoicism. It's not about controlling the chaos, it's about controlling your response to it. Imagine carrying a compass that always points north, no matter how turbulent the seas. These mantras are that compass. They're not just quotes to admire, they're tools to use, daily reminders to steady your mind when everything else feels like it's spinning. This video is your guide to turning ancient wisdom into modern-day strength. We'll explore the core principles of Stoicism, unpack powerful quotes that cut through the noise, and most importantly, show you how to apply them in real life. Whether you're facing overwhelm at work, uncertainty in relationships, or just the everyday grind that wears you down, these 34 mantras will help you reclaim your focus, your calm, and your sense of control. This isn't about quick fixes or empty inspiration. It's about building a mindset that lasts, one that doesn't just survive chaos but thrives in it, ready to begin. Let's step into the stillness together. Here's a truth that changes everything. Not everything is yours to control. The car that cuts you off, the unexpected bill, the weather ruining your weekend plans, none of it bends to your will. But here's where Stoicism hands you back your power. It starts with what Epictetus called the dichotomy of control, the simple but life-changing split between what's in your hands and what isn't. Imagine a circle drawn in the sand. Inside it, your opinions, your actions, your reactions, your sphere of choice. Outside it, everything else, other people's choices, the past, even your own body's limits. Chaos doesn't come from the storm itself. It comes from straining against that boundary, wasting energy on what lies beyond it. Epictetus put it bluntly, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Think about traffic. You didn't cause the gridlock and you can't magically clear it, but you control whether you white-knuckle the wheel in frustration or use the time to listen to an audiobook, call a friend, or just breathe. The event isn't the problem, it's the belief that it shouldn't have happened. That's the misalignment. We scream at delays like they're personal betrayals, as if the universe owes us smooth roads. Try this today. Grab a notebook and make 2 columns. In one, list the things that rattled you this week, the rude comment, the delayed flight, the news you couldn't unsee. Now, beside each, ask, was this truly mine to change? If not, cross it out. Not with resignation, but with relief. Every crossed out item is a weight you're free to drop. The goal isn't to stop caring, it's to redirect your care where it actually matters. Because here's the secret, when you stop fighting the unwinnable battles, you start winning the ones that count. Chaos is not your enemy. Let that sink in for a moment. Most of us treat life's disruptions like intruders, unwelcome, unfair, something to rage against or resent. But what if the very things that throw us off balance are secretly shaping us into stronger, wiser versions of ourselves? That's the radical promise of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. Borrowed by Nietzsche but rooted in Stoicism, it's the art of not just enduring what happens to you but embracing it, even when it hurts. Seneca put it this way: difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Every setback, every detour, every moment that feels like it's breaking you, that's the raw material for your growth. Take Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during one of history's deadliest plagues. Bodies piled in the streets, the economy collapsed, and panic spread faster than the disease. Yet his private journals reveal no despair, just a relentless focus on what he could do: organize relief efforts, comfort the grieving, and lead with compassion. He wrote, "The obstacle is the way." The plague wasn't a distraction from his duty, it was his duty. That shift from "why is this happening to me" to "what does this make possible?" changes everything. Here's the hard truth: resistance amplifies pain. Fighting reality is like trying to swim against a riptide. It exhausts you without moving you forward. But acceptance, that's not surrender, it's strategy. Think of a tree in a storm. It doesn't curse the wind, it bends, roots deep, and grows stronger from the resistance. You've felt this before, that moment when a cancelled plan forced you to discover a better path, or a failure taught you a lesson success never could. So ask yourself, what recent challenge have you been resisting like an enemy? Maybe it's a job loss, a strained relationship, or even a personal flaw you keep wrestling with. Now flip the script. What if it's not a roadblock but a redirect? A chance to practice patience, to innovate, to let go of what wasn't serving you anyway. Amor Fati isn't about pretending things are perfect. It's about trusting that even the broken pieces are part of the mosaic. The chaos isn't here to break you, it's here to build you, and once you see that, you stop fearing the storm and start learning to dance in the rain. What if you could disarm fear before it ever takes hold? That's the power of Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of deliberately imagining the worst-case scenario, not to dwell in dread, but to strip it of its power. Seneca called this rehearsing misfortune in advance, and it works like a mental fire drill. When flames actually erupt, you don't panic. You've already mapped the exits. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that visualizing challenges in advance reduces anxiety and sharpens problem solving. It's not about pessimism, it's about preparedness. Take Seneca's own routine. Each morning, he'd pause to mentally walk through potential disasters, losing his wealth, his health, even his reputation. Then he'd ask himself, could I endure this? The answer was almost always yes. By confronting these shadows head-on, he transformed the unknown into the manageable. Here's how he put it: he robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. Fear thrives in the fog of uncertainty, but shine a light on it, and suddenly, it's just another problem with solutions. Think of it like packing an umbrella before a trip. You check the forecast, see rain, and toss one in your bag. When the storm hits, you're inconvenienced, not ruined. Now apply that to bigger storms: a job loss, a breakup, a health scare. What if you'd already asked yourself, what would I do if this happened? Maybe you'd realize you have savings, a support network, or skills to pivot. The event itself might still sting, but the paralyzing terror gone. You've already walked the path in your mind, and that changes everything. Here's your challenge. Pick one thing you're quietly afraid of, something that lurks in the back of your mind. Maybe it's a project failing, a difficult conversation, or an unexpected bill. Close your eyes and play it out in detail. What's the absolute worst that could happen? Then ask, how would I respond? Write it down. You'll likely notice two things. First, the worst case is rarely as catastrophic as your anxiety painted it. Second, you're more resourceful than you thought. That's the magic of Premeditatio Malorum. It doesn't prevent storms, it hands you an anchor. And when you realize you can weather even the worst, what's left to fear? How much time do you waste pretending you'll live forever? It's uncomfortable to confront, but here's the paradox: remembering your mortality, what the Stoics called Memento Mori, isn't about darkness. It's about lighting a fire under your life. Picture this: if you knew today was your last, how would you spend it? Chasing trivial arguments, scrolling mindlessly? Or would you finally say the words you've been holding back? Create the thing you've been postponing. Step fully into the person you're meant to be. That's the power of death contemplation. It's not a morbid obsession. It's a lens that brings what matters into sharp focus. Marcus Aurelius kept this truth at the forefront of his mind. In his private journals, he wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. Imagine the Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men in history, using his own mortality as a daily compass. Not to dwell in fear, but to cut through the noise. He saw every sunrise as a gift, not a guarantee, a reminder that time is the one currency you can't earn back. The Stoics weren't fixated on death, they were fixated on life, because when you stop pretending you have endless tomorrows, you start making today count. Think about the hours you've lost to things that don't matter, the petty grievances, the procrastination, the distractions dressed as priorities. Now imagine standing at the end of your life, looking back. Would those choices fill you with pride or regret? Here's a practice to try: the legacy check. Ask yourself, what will matter in 100 years? Not the gossip, not the fleeting wins, but the love you gave, the wisdom you shared, the dent you made in the universe. That's the filter. Every time you're torn between options, run them through it. This isn't about grand gestures. It's about the micro decisions, the patience you choose instead of anger, the integrity you uphold when no one's watching, the moments you're fully present instead of mentally elsewhere. Death doesn't make life meaningless, it makes it urgent. When you stop hiding from the clock, you stop waiting for someday. You write the letter today. You start the project today. You forgive, you create, you leap today, because the Stoics knew a secret. The awareness of an ending is what makes the middle unforgettable. Every obstacle you've ever faced, every rejection, every setback, every door that slammed shut was secretly holding a key. That's the essence of Ryan Holiday's "The Obstacle is the Way," a modern take on an ancient Stoic truth. The very thing blocking your path is the path. Marcus Aurelius put it even more plainly: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, that sounds like a paradox. How can a roadblock double as a roadmap? But history's most resilient minds didn't just survive adversity, they weaponized it. Take the story of Steve Jobs. When he was ousted from Apple, the company he founded, it felt like a brutal dead end. But that forced exile led him to launch NXT and Pixar Ventures that not only revolutionized animation but gave him the skills to return to Apple and reinvent it. The obstacle, his very public failure, wasn't just a setback. It was the necessary detour that made his greatest work possible. The Stoics would call this turning the hindrance into the hinge. When you hit resistance, you've got two choices: let it stop you or let it shape you. Here's how it works in practice. Imagine you're a startup founder whose funding falls through. The easy reaction: panic. The Stoic reaction: pivot. Maybe you streamline your product, bootstrap with leaner operations, or discover a niche bigger investors overlooked. The obstacle: the lack of capital, forces creativity you'd never have tapped into with easy money. That's the alchemy of adversity. It strips away the non-essential and reveals what truly matters. Now think about your own life. What's frustrating you right now? A stalled project, a strained relationship, a skill you can't seem to master. Instead of asking, why is this happening? Try asking, what is this making possible? Maybe the delay is giving you time to refine your idea. Maybe the conflict is teaching you patience. Maybe the struggle is building strength you'll need for what's next. The obstacle isn't just something to overcome. It's the training ground for the person you're becoming. Marcus Aurelius faced invasions, plagues, and betrayals, yet he wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." That's the shift. The barrier isn't just a test, it's the curriculum. So the next time life throws a boulder in your path, don't just climb over it. Stop, study it, because hidden in its rough edges might just be the tools you need to build something new. What if luxury isn't a privilege but a trap? That's the provocative question Seneca explored through his radical practice of voluntary discomfort, deliberately choosing hardship to remind himself he could thrive without it. Once a month, he'd sleep on the floor, wear rough clothing, or eat nothing but stale bread. Not because he had to, but because he could. Set aside a certain number of days, he wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare. This wasn't self-punishment, it was freedom training. By temporarily stripping away comforts, he proved to himself that happiness wasn't tied to external conditions. And in that realization, he found an unshakable confidence. If I can handle this, I can handle anything. Fast forward 2,000 years, and the same principle fuels modern minimalism and digital detoxes. Why do people willingly trade sprawling closets for capsule wardrobes, or endless scrolling for screen-free Sundays? For the same reason Seneca embraced his austerity experiments, to break dependency on what they think they need. Musonius Rufus, another Stoic teacher, put it bluntly, how can someone who's never gone without a meal understand true hunger? Comfort, when unchallenged, becomes a cage. But when you test your limits, you rediscover your resilience. Think about your own life. How many essentials are actually crutches? The constant dopamine hits from notifications, the daily takeout because cooking feels tedious, the thermostat always set to perfect. There's nothing wrong with ease until you can't function without it. That's where Seneca's wisdom hits hardest. Luxury doesn't just spoil your palate, it weakens your spirit. The muscle of contentment atrophies when it's never stretched. Here's your challenge, a 24-hour comfort fast. Pick a day this week to consciously strip back. No complaints, no luxuries. Take cold showers. Skip the streaming binge and sit with silence. Walk instead of drive. Eat simple, unprocessed foods. Notice what happens when you stop numbing discomfort and start leaning into it. At first, it might feel like deprivation, but by sunset, you'll likely discover something surprising. The less you rely on external comforts, the more you trust your inner strength. Seneca didn't practice poverty because he hated pleasure. He did it to prove pleasure was optional, and in that space of optionality, he found something far richer, true choice. The modern world screams that more is always better. The Stoics whisper back, better is knowing you don't need more. Try the fast, not to punish yourself, but to meet the version of you that's been hidden under layers of convenience, the one who remembers how to be at peace even when the cushions are gone. Standing on the balcony of his military camp, Marcus Aurelius would gaze at the stars and practice what he called the view from above, a mental shift that lifted him from daily frustrations into cosmic perspective. He'd imagine Earth shrinking beneath him, armies like ants, empires fleeting as morning fog. Think of the substance of the whole, he wrote, and how all things exchange with one another. That zoomed-out lens wasn't escapism, it was clarity. Suddenly, the petty squabbles, the ego battles, the things that felt so urgent, they evaporated. What remained was the breathtaking truth: we're all stardust spinning on the same fragile rock, bound by the same brevity. Astronauts call this the overview effect. When they see Earth from space, no borders, no noise, just a blue marble hanging in darkness, they're overwhelmed by its beauty and fragility. Conflicts that seemed monumental from the ground become invisible. That's the Stoic superpower, pulling back the camera. Next time you're stuck in traffic or fuming over a rude comment, try this. Close your eyes and picture Earth from a satellite's view. Your car, a speck, that argument, a blip. The sting fades when you realize how small the moment is against the vast canvas of time. Marcus knew this shift wasn't just poetic, it was practical. He'd ask, will this matter in a year, in 10? Most of what consumes our energy won't. The coworker who took credit for your idea, the neighbor's noisy dog, the stain on your shirt before a meeting, these aren't crises. They're distractions dressed as emergencies. The view from above exposes the illusion. Here's how to practice it tonight. Go outside and look up, not at your phone, not at your worries, at the stars. Let the sheer scale of the universe humble you. Those pinpricks of light, some are already dead. Their glow just now reaching us across millennia. Your lifespan is a flicker in that timeline. Yet here's the paradox. That realization doesn't diminish your life, it magnifies it. When you stop sweating the small stuff, you free up space for what actually shines: love, creation, connection. The stars don't care about your to-do list, but they'll remind you why any of it matters. Your mind is a blade, but like any weapon, it dulls without maintenance. That's why Musonius Rufus called journaling the act of sharpening the mind on the whetstone of reflection. Think about it, a sword left untended rusts. A mind left unexamined, it grows sluggish, reactive, clouded by unchecked emotions and half-formed thoughts. But when you put pen to paper, you're not just recording events, you're forging clarity. Marcus Aurelius knew this. His meditations weren't written for posterity, they were private dialogues with himself, a relentless honing of his own principles. You have to assemble your life yourself, he wrote, action by action, and that assembly happens in the quiet space of the page. Consider this: every evening, Marcus dissected his day like a surgeon. Where had he let anger take the wheel? Where had he mistaken noise for necessity? His journal was his accountability partner, his teacher, his mirror. No one else read it. The stakes were truth, not performance. That's the power of journaling as a Stoic practice. It's not about crafting pretty prose. It's about confronting yourself with the same unflinching honesty you'd use to inspect a blade for nicks. So how do you start? Try this 3-sentence nightly ritual. First, what did I truly control today? Not the weather, not your boss's mood, just your choices. This roots you in the dichotomy of control. Second, where did I falter? Not to self-flagellate, but to spot patterns. Did you snap at a loved one, procrastinate on a goal, name it without judgment? Third, what's one small step toward better tomorrow? Maybe it's pausing before reacting or tackling a task before noon. Keep it actionable. The magic isn't in the length, it's in the consistency. Like a blacksmith's daily hammer strikes, these brief reflections compound. Over time, you'll notice something startling. The same triggers that once threw you off now glance off a sharper, steadier mind, because a blade honed daily never goes dull. And neither does the thinker who wields it. Epictetus stood in the crowded marketplace not as a stranger, but as a citizen of the world, what he called a cosmopolite. If someone told you that your mother was speaking ill of you behind your back, he asked his students, would you rush to confront her, or would you first pause, consider the bond you share, and seek understanding? That pause, that widening of perspective is the essence of sympatheia, the Stoic belief in the interconnectedness of all people. Fast forward 2 millennia, and we're drowning in connection yet starving for empathy. We've never had more tools to communicate, Yet we've never been more polarized. The Stoics would say we've forgotten hierarchical circles of concern, the idea that our compassion should ripple outward like stones dropped in water, from self to family, to community, to strangers, even to those we disagree with. Hierarchals visualized these circles as concentric rings. At the center, you, the next ring, your immediate family, then friends, neighbors, fellow citizens, and finally, all of humanity. The practice: draw the circles inward. Treat the stranger as your neighbor, the neighbor as your friend, the friend as family. It's not about erasing boundaries, but about recognizing that those boundaries are more porous than we pretend. When a driver cuts you off, instead of erupting, ask, what if that's a parent rushing to a sick child? When a colleague snaps, consider, maybe they're carrying a burden I can't see. Sympatheia isn't naive idealism, it's social alchemy. It transforms transactions into relationships, conflicts into conversations. Here's the challenge today: perform one act of kindness for someone outside your usual circles. Pay for the coffee of the person behind you in line. Leave a genuine compliment for a delivery driver. Listen, really listen, to a coworker's story without waiting for your turn to speak. These aren't grand gestures, but they're radical in a world that rewards self-interest. The Stoics knew a secret: empathy is a muscle. The more you stretch it, the stronger it becomes. And when you start seeing yourself in others, you'll find chaos feels less like a storm and more like a shared dance. The global citizen isn't born, they're made, one deliberate act of connection at a time. Cato the Younger, one of Rome's most uncompromising Stoics, would deliberately walk barefoot through snow-covered streets, not because he enjoyed discomfort, but because he understood something profound: pain, when chosen, becomes preparation. While his peers wrapped themselves in luxury, Cato trained his body and mind to endure hardship voluntarily, so that when life imposed hardship, he wouldn't just survive it. He'd master it. This is the paradox of voluntary discomfort. By willingly embracing small struggles, we immunize ourselves against larger ones. It's not about seeking suffering for its own sake. It's about recognizing that comfort, when unchallenged, breeds fragility. Modern science backs this up. Cold showers, intermittent fasting, high-intensity interval training, these aren't just health trends. They're proof that we instinctively crave the growth that comes from controlled struggle. When you step into an ice bath, your body isn't just building tolerance to cold. It's learning a far more valuable lesson: you are stronger than this sensation. The same principle applies to mental resilience. Every time you resist the urge to check your phone during focused work, or say no to dessert when you're practicing discipline, you're not denying yourself pleasure. You're reinforcing a truth the Stoics knew well. Happiness isn't the absence of discomfort, it's the confidence that discomfort can't control you. Think of resilience like a muscle. If you've never lifted weights, even a light dumbbell feels crushing, but train consistently, and soon what once felt impossible becomes routine. Voluntary discomfort works the same way. Start small. Leave your jacket at home on a chilly walk. Skip the snooze button tomorrow morning. Turn off the GPS and trust yourself to navigate. These aren't punishments, they're micro-rebellions against the modern world's obsession with ease. Each one whispers to your subconscious, I don't need perfect conditions to be okay. Here's the real test. Pick one comfort you rely on daily. Maybe it's always having snacks on hand, or never letting yourself feel bored, and let it go for a week. Notice the itch to retreat to what's easy. Then notice something else, the quiet pride when you don't. That pride is the sound of your resilience growing. Because here's what Cato knew that most of us forget. The path to true freedom isn't paved with pillows. It's built on the unshakable knowledge that you can walk through snow barefoot and come out warmer on the other side. Imagine your mind as a courtroom where every thought that enters must stand trial before it earns your belief. That's the Stoic practice of objective judgment, the art of interrogating your initial impressions before letting them dictate your reactions. Epictetus laid it bare: it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. A cutting remark from a coworker isn't inherently painful. It's your belief that their words diminish you that stings. The criticism itself is just sound waves. The disturbance, that's homemade. This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about scrutinizing the assumptions that fuel them. The Stoics called these knee-jerk interpretations impressions, raw, unfiltered reactions to the world. Like a spam filter for your psyche, objective judgment asks, is this thought true? Is it useful? Take criticism. Your first impression might scream, they're attacking me, but pause. What if it's not an attack but clumsy feedback? What if it's even gasp right? The facts haven't changed, just your framing. Here's how Marcus Aurelius practiced it. When insulted, he'd picture the words as leaves tossed by the wind, noticeable, but powerless unless he clutched them. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." That's the pivot. The offense isn't in the comment, it's in your consent to be offended. Think of a time someone misjudged you. Did their opinion alter your worth, or did your reaction to it? Try this today. The next time you feel provoked, a snarky text, a sideways glance, freeze. Ask yourself 3 questions. What exactly happened? Strip away the story you're adding. What's within my control here? Maybe just your response. Is my reaction serving me? Fury might feel righteous, but does it move you forward? This pause is where your power lies, because between the event and your action, there's always a gap. And in that gap, you'll find something extraordinary: the freedom to choose who you'll be when the world pushes your buttons. How often do you find yourself physically in one place while mentally trapped in yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's worries? Seneca saw this divided state as the ultimate theft of life itself. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, he wrote, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. Think about that for a moment. How many sunrises have you missed because you were too busy rehearsing conversations that never happened, or reliving ones that already did? The Stoics offered an antidote, the radical practice of presence, what Seneca called the gifts of now, not as a fluffy mindfulness trend, but as a fierce reclaiming of your only true possession, this exact second. Marcus Aurelius put a finer point on it: confine yourself to the present, not because the past and future don't matter, but because they're illusions you can't hold. The past is a shadow, the future a whisper, but this breath, this heartbeat, this is where your power lies. He called it each moment's sufficiency, the quiet understanding that now is always enough to begin, to choose, to act. A man who ruled an empire understood what most of us forget: presence isn't passive, it's the most active stance there is. Here's how to taste it. Try the 5 senses drill right where you are. Name one thing you see, really see, like the way light bends through your window. One thing you hear, maybe the hum of appliances you've tuned out. One thing you feel, the texture of fabric against your skin. One thing you smell, coffee, rain, whatever lingers in the air. One thing you taste, even if it's just the aftertaste of your last meal. Congratulations, you've just anchored yourself in what's real. Anxiety can't breathe in that kind of oxygen. Your challenge: pick one routine act today: drinking tea, folding laundry, petting your dog, and spend 10 minutes doing only that. Not while scrolling, not while planning, just fully there. When your mind drifts, and it will, gently return to the weight of the mug in your hands, the warmth, the steam's dance. That's the practice, not perfection, but return. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew: you don't find peace by escaping the moment. You find it by sinking so deeply into it that there's no room left for anything else. The present isn't a waiting room, it's the whole museum, and your ticket's already punched. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, left us with a deceptively simple formula for wisdom. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. At first glance, it sounds like basic manners, but dig deeper and you'll find a masterclass in power. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a strategic tool, a shield against chaos, and sometimes the loudest statement you can make. Think about the last time someone tried to bait you into an argument. Every unreturned barb, every withheld reaction, drained their words of force. That's the Stoic secret. What you refuse to engage loses its grip on you. Epictetus took this further. If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses or defend yourself. Just reply, "He must not know my other faults, or he wouldn't have mentioned only these." Brutal, right? But there's genius here. When you don't rise to gossip or criticism, you reveal their irrelevance. Social media thrives on hot takes and outrage. What happens when you starve the fire of oxygen? Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing others to confront their own noise. Consider the courtroom tactic attorneys use. When a witness over-explains, they unravel. But the witness who pauses, who answers only what's asked, they radiate credibility. The same applies in life. Ever noticed how the most respected person in the room is often the one who speaks least? It's not passivity. It's the confidence to let others fill the silence first, revealing their hand while you conserve your energy for what matters. Here's your challenge, a 24-hour vow of strategic silence. Not monastic muteness, but a conscious fast from complaints, gossip, and unsolicited opinions. When the urge to vent arises, pause. Ask, will this improve anything? If not, let it pass like a cloud. You'll discover something startling: how much of your speech is habit, not necessity. And in that space between impulse and utterance, you'll find a new kind of strength, the power to choose your battles instead of being chosen by them. The modern world equates volume with value. The Stoics knew better. Silence isn't empty. It's the fertile ground where real understanding grows, and sometimes the most profound thing you can say is nothing at all. Here's a sobering truth. You could spend a lifetime crafting the perfect reputation, polishing your image, chasing approval, performing for the crowd, and still wake up one day to find the crowd has moved on. The Stoics called this the inner citadel, the unshakable core of character no outside opinion can touch. Epictetus framed it brilliantly. You're not a statue on display, you're an actor handed a role. Your job isn't to rewrite the script, but to play your part with excellence. Think about that. An actor doesn't beg the audience for better lines. They focus on delivering their performance with integrity, regardless of cheers or boos. Your character is your script, reputation. That's just the fickle applause of strangers. Modern life tests this daily. Cancel culture, viral outrage, the endless performance of social media. We're drowning in external validation. But here's the question the Stoics would ask: who holds the gavel in your mental courtroom? Is it the anonymous mob of online opinion, or the quiet voice of your own principles? Consider the backlash faced by figures like Marcus Rashford, the footballer who campaigned for child hunger relief. Critics called him too political. He kept feeding kids, or the scientist who stood by climate data despite smear campaigns. Their compass wasn't popularity, it was truth. This isn't about dismissing feedback. It's about recognizing the hierarchy of judgment. Imagine 3 concentric circles. The innermost, your own moral code, the standards you'd uphold even if no one was watching. The middle, trusted mentors and loved ones who have earned the right to speak into your life. The outermost, the ever-shifting crowd, the trending takes, the faceless algorithms. Most of us live backwards, letting the outermost circle drown out the inner 2. The Stoic fix: flip the volume. Try this exercise. List 5 values you'd defend even if the world mocked you. Not vague, ideal, specific stances. Maybe it's refusing to gossip, or walking away from unethical profits, or speaking up when it's easier to stay silent. Now ask, when did I last bend these for approval? That gap is where character gets built or eroded. Epictetus warned, if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid. Growth requires risking reputation for the sake of integrity. Here's the ultimate test. Picture yourself at the end of your life, surrounded not by fans or followers, but by the unvarnished record of your choices. No spin, no filters. Will you be proud of the person in that mirror? That's the only review that lasts. The rest is just noise. Anger, Seneca wrote into Era, is brief insanity, a fire that burns the hand of the one who holds it. Picture this, you're gripping a scalding coal, ready to hurl it at someone who wronged you. Who gets burned first? That's the paradox of rage. The target might flinch, but you carry the blisters. Seneca wasn't just theorizing. He watched Emperor Nero, his own student, spiral into tyrannical violence fueled by unchecked temper. And here's the chilling truth: anger doesn't discriminate. It can topple empires or ruin Tuesday mornings with equal ease. Modern life offers endless kindling for that fire. A driver cuts you off, and suddenly your pulse races, your jaw clenches, your vision narrows to a tunnel of outrage. Or worse, an online stranger dismisses your opinion, and before you know it, you're typing a novel-length rebuttal at midnight, fingers hammering the keyboard like each keystrike is a punch. In the moment, it feels righteous, but step back, and the pattern emerges. Anger hijacks your logic, drains your energy, and leaves you holding the charred remains of your peace. Seneca's remedy, a cooling delay. The greatest remedy for anger, he advised, is time, not years, seconds. The space between trigger and reaction is where your power lies. Try this. The next time anger flares, freeze. Count 10 breaths, not shallow sips of air, but deep, deliberate inhales that fill your lungs and slow your heart. In that pause, ask yourself 2 questions. What story am I telling myself about this situation? Hint, it's probably personalizing the offense. They did this to me. And will this matter in a week? Most anger evaporates under that lens. History's most decisive leaders, from Nelson Mandela to Angela Merkel, weren't emotionless. They simply understood that rage clouds judgment. Mandela spent 27 years in prison, yet emerged preaching reconciliation, not revenge. Why? Because he knew anger, however justified, would only rebuild the bars he'd just escaped. The Stoic twist: anger isn't wrong, it's just unproductive. Channel that energy into action, not eruption. Here's the litmus test. Think of the last thing that made you furious. Now imagine handing that memory to your future self a decade from now. Would they be baffled by the intensity? That's the distance anger can't sustain. Like a storm, it's loud and destructive in the moment, but it always passes. Your job isn't to never feel the heat. It's to remember you're the one holding the coal, and the choice to drop it, that's yours alone. What do your possessions actually possess? The Stoics had a word for things like wealth, status, and material comforts, adiaphora, meaning indifference. Not worthless, but neutral, their value determined only by how you use them. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, slept on a simple cot and wrote. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died and returned to the same dust. That's the vanity of possessions laid bare. The emperor who could have bathed in gold knew this truth. Objects don't elevate you, they're just props. The real test is whether you own them or they own you. Look at modern billionaire minimalists like Warren Buffett, living in the same modest house for decades, or the late Steve Jobs, whose iconic black turtleneck was less a fashion statement than a refusal to waste mental energy on wardrobe choices. Contrast that with hoarders drowning in unopened boxes, or the influencer scrambling for the latest designer bag to fill some unnamed void. The difference isn't wealth, it's attachment. The Stoics weren't preaching poverty. They were exposing the illusion that external things could ever be the source of peace. Here's the litmus test. Walk through your home and find one item you've kept for years but never used. The fancy kitchen gadget still in its box, the good china gathering dust, the designer shoes that pinch your feet. Why does it still occupy space in your life? Is it serving you, or are you serving some idea of what it represents? Marcus warned, when you grow attached to things, remember their nature. That way, when they break or vanish, you won't be disturbed. Your challenge this week: donate one precious, unused item. Not the junk you've been meaning to toss, but something you've clung to out of habit or imagined significance. Feel the resistance, that's where the lesson lies. The moment you release it, you'll glimpse a profound freedom, the lightness of owning nothing that owns you back. Because here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered centuries ago: the less you need to have, the more you get to be. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's cruelty, carried a truth that still shakes the modern world: you are not your body. You are not your job. Imagine the man who could say that, whose very limbs bore the scars of another's ownership, yet declared himself freer than his captors. His words cut to the bone. No man is free who is not master of himself, not of his circumstances, not of others' opinions, just himself. Fast forward 2,000 years, and we've built identities on flimsier foundations than sand. Lose a job and it feels like losing your soul. Change your relationship status and the ground tilts. Why? Because we've confused having with being. Think about the last time someone asked, "What do you do?" Your answer likely named a title, not your values. Now imagine losing that title overnight. The shock isn't just financial, it's existential. Who are you without the business card? This isn't hypothetical. Studies show job loss triggers identity crises rivaling divorce. But here's the Stoic reframe. What if that rupture isn't destruction, but liberation? When the label falls away, what's left is you, the choices you make, the character you uphold, the way you meet the world when no one's applauding. Epictetus didn't deny reality. He acknowledged his broken body, his enslaved past, but he drew a line. These things describe me. They don't define me. Modern parallels abound. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter as a divorced, government aid-dependent single mother. She could have called herself failed. Instead, she became the woman who wrote regardless of her bank balance. Or take athletes like Michael Jordan, cut from his high school team. The jersey didn't make him, his relentless discipline did. Here's your challenge: define yourself without external labels for one day. Not, "I'm a manager," but "I'm someone who solves problems." Not, "I'm a parent," but "I'm a guide who shows up with patience." Feel the shift, that self-ownership. The titles may come and go, but the core, your integrity, your curiosity, your capacity to choose, that's unshakable. Because freedom isn't about controlling what happens to you. It's about remembering who you are when everything else falls away. Seneca, the philosopher who tutored emperors, was once exiled to Corsica, a political smear that could have crushed him. Instead, he treated it like a shipwreck, stripping away every non-essential until he found himself standing on solid ground. "A setback is a setup for a comeback," he wrote, though he wouldn't have used such a cliché. His point was sharper. What looks like destruction is often just redirection in disguise. Picture a storm-tossed ship. When the hull cracks, the cargo spills, gold sinks, but the empty barrels float. The sailor who clings to the gold drowns. The one who grabs a barrel survives. The lesson: sometimes losing what you thought you needed is the only way to discover what actually saves you. Modern careers are full of these shipwrecks. Take the story of Brian Acton, co-founder of WhatsApp. After being rejected for a job at Facebook in 2009, he channeled that frustration into building a messaging app, which Facebook later bought for $19 billion. Or consider J.K. Rowling, whose manuscript for Harry Potter was rejected 12 times before finding a publisher. The closed doors weren't roadblocks, they were reroutes to paths she couldn't yet see. The Stoics would call this the art of the pivot, recognizing that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's often the raw material. Here's the practice. Think back to a moment when life yanked the rug out. A layoff, a breakup, a rejected proposal. At the time, it probably felt like the world ending, but now, scan the wreckage for the barrel that kept you afloat. Maybe losing that job forced you to freelance, uncovering skills you'd never tapped in a cubicle. Maybe the failed relationship taught you boundaries that made future love healthier. Seneca's exile gave him time to write his most enduring works. What did your shipwreck give you? The trick is to stop asking why me and start asking what now. A sailor doesn't waste breath cursing the storm, he adjusts the sails. Your turn, pick one setback that still stings. Write down 3 ways it secretly served you, not to sugarcoat the pain, but to reveal the pivot. Because here's the truth the Stoics knew, the tide never turns on its own. You turn it barrel by barrel by choosing to see wreckage as raw material. And sometimes the best view of your future comes from floating on the pieces of your past. Diogenes, the philosopher who lived in a barrel, carried all his possessions on his back, yet Alexander the Great stood before him and declared, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." That's the paradox of subtraction. The man with nothing was envied by the emperor of the known world. While others chased more land, more gold, more titles, Diogenes distilled life to its essence. His barrel wasn't a symbol of poverty, it was a manifesto. Happiness, he proved, isn't found in accumulation but in liberation. Seneca echoed this centuries later. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Wealth isn't measured by what fills your coffers, but by how little your soul demands. Modern life has inverted this wisdom. We've turned our calendars into overcrowded warehouses, every slot packed with meetings, obligations, and performative busyness. We call it productivity, but the Stoics would call it self-imposed slavery. Think about your typical week. How many commitments did you say yes to out of guilt rather than genuine desire? How many hours are spent maintaining a lifestyle you don't even enjoy? Clutter isn't just physical, it's temporal. And just as a hoarder's house suffocates under unused objects, a cluttered schedule stifles the space needed to breathe, think, and truly live. Here's the practice today. Eliminate one non-essential commitment, not by quietly resenting it, but by deliberately letting it go. That networking event you're dreading. Decline the committee meeting that could be an email. Opt out. The extra project you took on to please others. Hand it back. This isn't laziness, it's strategic editing. Like a sculptor chipping away marble to reveal the statue within, you're removing everything that isn't essential to uncover the life you actually want. Diogenes didn't need a barrel to teach this lesson. He simply needed the courage to live it. When Alexander asked what he could do for him, the philosopher replied, "Stand aside, you're blocking my sunlight." That's the power of enough, not deprivation, but the radiant clarity of knowing what truly matters and discarding the rest without apology. Your turn. What's one thing you can subtract today to let the light in? Thales of Miletus, one of history's first philosophers, was once asked what's most universal. His answer, silence. Not because words lack power, but because most of us wield them carelessly, scattering them like seeds in barren soil, then wondering why nothing grows. The Stoics took this further. Speech isn't just sound, it's currency. Every sentence spends attention, yours and theirs, and as Musonius Rufus warned, just as you wouldn't pour fine wine into a broken cup, don't pour wisdom into ears that aren't ready to hear. Think about the last time someone unloaded unsolicited advice on you. Did it land, or did it bounce off, leaving both of you emptier than before? Modern life bombards us with noise, endless meetings, notifications, and small talk that leaves your social battery drained. But here's the counterintuitive truth: depth isn't found in volume, it's found in restraint. Consider the difference between shallow streams and deep wells. One rushes loudly over rocks, the other holds quiet reserves that quench real thirst. Cal Newport's concept of deep work mirrors this. The most meaningful contributions come from focused, uninterrupted thought, something chatter actively destroys. The Stoics didn't just avoid idle talk, they saw it as theft of time, of focus, of the chance to say something that actually matters. Practice this today. Make your next conversation 80% listening. Not the passive, waiting for your turn to speak kind, but active listening, the kind that notices the pause before someone answers, the shift in tone when they mention a struggle, the unasked question hiding behind their words. When you do speak, measure it. Is this adding light or just heat? The Roman Senate knew the power of brevity. Cato the Younger could halt debates with 3 words: Carthago delenda isti, Carthage must be destroyed. Not a rambling monologue, a laser strike. Your words are finite. Spend them where they'll echo, because in a world drowning in noise, the scarcest resource isn't information, it's silence. And from that silence, the right words rise like monuments. Rain isn't good or bad, it just is. The same storm that ruins your picnic saves a farmer's crops. That's the heart of Epictetus' radical idea. Events are not what disturb us, but our judgments about them. Think about that for a second. The rain didn't change. The difference between frustration and gratitude isn't in the clouds. It's in the story you tell yourself about them. Marcus Aurelius called this reprogramming assumptions, the deliberate act of swapping the lens through which you view the world. One person sees a traffic jam as stolen time. Another uses it to listen to an audiobook they've been putting off. Same situation, different experience. Take something as simple as a delayed flight. Most of us groan, check our watches, and spiral into complaints. But what if you saw that extra hour as a gift? Time to finish that novel, call an old friend, or just sit with your thoughts. The delay didn't change, you did. That's the Stoic secret. Perception isn't passive. It's a muscle you train. Marcus wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. The anxiety wasn't in the event, it was in his interpretation, and interpretations can be rewritten. History's most resilient minds mastered this reframe. Thomas Edison's lab burned to the ground in 1914, destroying years of work. His response: "Thank God all our mistakes are burned up. Now we can start fresh." The fire was the same for everyone watching, but Edison saw something no one else did, an opportunity hidden in the ashes. That's not optimism, it's alchemy. The ability to look at the same facts as everyone else and extract a different meaning. Here's your challenge: pick one daily annoyance, the neighbor's barking dog, the slow elevator, the endless emails, and reframe it as beneficial. Maybe the dog reminds you to appreciate moments of quiet. The elevator forces you to pause and breathe. The emails, proof you're needed and trusted. The event stays the same. But the weight it carries, that's yours to choose, because here's the truth the Stoics uncovered long ago. suffering isn't in what happens. It's in the space between what happens and what you decide it means. Close that gap and you'll find the world hasn't changed just your eyes. Cato the Younger once walked through Rome's streets wearing a ridiculous outfit, a purple robe and a flute player's hat just to let bystanders mock him. This wasn't performance art, it was ego demolition. The same man who could have wielded his political influence like a weapon instead chose humiliation as a daily practice. Why? Because he understood a truth we've forgotten. The ego isn't just inflated by praise, it's starved by deliberate self-effacement. While today's world screams for clout, louder, prouder, more visible, the Stoics whispered a counterintuitive command: the higher you stand, the quieter you should be. Consider the modern obsession with personal branding. Social media rewards visibility over substance, turning even acts of kindness into content. A donation isn't just given, it's hashtag. A meal isn't just shared, it's staged for likes. Contrast that with the Stoic ideal of anonymous virtue. Seneca advised, do good and then disappear. Not because deeds lack value when unseen, but because their purity grows when stripped of spectators. Think of the anonymous donor who pays off school lunch debts without press releases, or the neighbor who shovels snow from an elderly couple's driveway before dawn. These acts carry a quiet power precisely because they reject the hunger for recognition. Here's the litmus test. When was the last time you did something genuinely kind without documenting it? Not for karma points, not for the glow of being perceived as generous just because it was right. Cato's flute hat wasn't about self-punishment, it was training. Every laugh directed at him sanded down the need to be taken seriously. Every sneer loosened the grip of others' opinions. The ego isn't defeated in grand battles, it's eroded through daily, deliberate acts of humility. Your challenge this week: perform one good deed in absolute secrecy. Pay for a stranger's coffee and leave before they notice. Tape a handwritten note of encouragement to a colleague's desk without signing it. The moment you feel the itch to claim credit, that's where the work begins. Because here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered: true strength isn't forged in the spotlight. It's built in the shadows where no one's watching but your own character. And in that quiet space, you'll find a freedom more valuable than any applause, the freedom to be good for goodness sake. Physics doesn't just explain the world, it heals the mind. That's the heart of Stoic cosmology, the ancient practice of seeing yourself as one tiny, transient piece of nature's grand design. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Think of yourself as a leaf falling from a tree. The tree that bore you will soon bear others." At first, that might sound bleak, but lean closer. There's profound comfort here, the same comfort we find watching waves erase footprints on a beach or autumn leaves returning to soil. The universe operates on rhythms older than civilizations, cycles where endings feed beginnings. Your existence isn't separate from these patterns, you're woven into them. Climate change throws this into sharp relief. We rage against rising temperatures, plastic-filled oceans, ecosystems unraveling as we should. But beneath the urgency lies a quieter truth: nature isn't betraying us. It's following its laws, indifferent to our timelines. The Stoics would argue that acceptance isn't surrender, it's clarity. Not to stop fighting for the planet, but to fight without the delusion that nature owes us stability. Ice ages came and went long before factories. Forests burned and regrew before humans named them. This perspective doesn't diminish our responsibility, it grounds it. We're not saving nature from itself, we're saving our place within it. Think of the natural cycles that steady you the way dawn always follows night, how winter's barren branches promise spring's return. There's therapy in that predictability. When life feels chaotic, the Stoics would tell you to step outside and look up. The moon waxes and wanes without your permission. Rivers carve canyons whether anyone watches or not. Your worries, your fears, your heartbreaks, they're part of this same vast machinery, not insignificant but nested within something larger. Here's an experiment. Next time stress grips you, find a patch of sky. Watch clouds drift, birds arc, the sun's angle shift. For those minutes, you're not a person with problems, you're stardust remembering it's made of the same stuff as supernovas. The universe has been expanding for 13 billion years. It will keep expanding long after you're gone. And in that scale, there's a strange, sweet relief. None of this is personal. The storm isn't targeting you. The drought isn't punishment. You're simply here, brief and brilliant, to witness it all. And in that witnessing, find your footing. The leaves don't resent their fall. The tides don't fight their pull. What if your peace lies not in resisting nature's laws, but in learning to dance with them? Imagine holding up a shield in battle, only to realize the arrows flying toward you are made of paper. That's the Stoic stance on insults. What stings isn't the words themselves, but your decision to raise the shield in the first place. Epictetus, who endured slavery and physical abuse, put it bluntly: if someone speaks badly of you, that's their problem. Your problem is how you react. Think about the last time someone hurled an insult your way, online or off. The words themselves were just vibrations in the air or pixels on a screen. The heat in your chest, that was your own mind assigning them power. Take online trolls, those faceless critics who thrive on provocation. Their comments are like graffiti on a subway car, loud, messy, and ultimately temporary. The train keeps moving. The Stoics would ask, why let someone else's spray paint dictate your journey? Marcus Aurelius faced far worse than keyboard warriors, senators plotting against him, generals questioning his authority. Yet he wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Not to outshout them, but to refuse them a seat at your mental table. Here's the practice. Next time criticism lands, write a response to it, full of fire, full of wit, whatever you need to exercise the frustration. Then delete it. Don't send, don't post. The act of writing channels the emotion. The act of discarding it reclaims your peace. Journalists call this the vomit draft, a purge of raw feeling that clears space for clarity. You'll notice something liberating. The words you didn't send lose their weight. They're just scribbles in a sandbox, washed away by the next tide. The real injury isn't the insult. It's the hours you spend rehearsing comebacks, the sleepless nights chewing on someone else's carelessness. Epictetus warned, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. The troll, the gossiper, the passive-aggressive co-worker, they only wield the power you hand them. So here's the ultimate shield. Let their words hit the ground like rain. You're not made of sugar, you won't melt, and when you walk away untouched, you're not ignoring the insult. You're proving it never mattered at all. Your mind has gates, not made of wood or iron, but of attention and judgment. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, called this the discipline of assent, the practice of pausing before letting any thought, impression, or piece of information march through unchecked. Picture yourself as a guard at a city gate. Every rumor, every headline, every passing emotion knocks for entry. Your job isn't to bar them all, but to ask, is this true? Is this useful before you swing the gates wide? In an age where misinformation spreads faster than truth, where algorithms feed us outrage disguised as news, this ancient practice isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Think about the last time you felt a surge of anger after reading a social media post, or spiraled into anxiety from a single news alert. Chances are you didn't pause to verify the facts, you assented instantly, letting the emotion hijack your rationality. The Stoics saw this as the root of most suffering. Epictetus warned, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say, 'Hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent.' That moment of hesitation, that sliver of space between stimulus and reaction, is where your power lies." Modern neuroscience backs this up. Studies show the brain's amygdala, the alarm system for threats, reacts to emotional content in milliseconds, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for critical thinking, lags behind. In other words, we're wired to believe first and question later. That made sense when survival meant reacting to rustling bushes, but today, it leaves us vulnerable to clickbait, conspiracy theories, and viral lies. The Stoic antidote: slow the gates. When a headline triggers you, ask, "What's the source?" When a friend shares proof of some scandal, wonder, "Who benefits if I believe this?" Here's your challenge today. Fact-check one assumption that carries emotional weight. Maybe it's the belief that your coworker's curt email meant disrespect, or that a trending statistic you saw is as dire as it seems. Dig deeper, find primary sources, ask alternative explanations. You'll often find the truth isn't just different, it's lighter. Like realizing the monster under your bed is just a shadow. The discipline of assent doesn't erase life's challenges. It just ensures you're fighting real battles, not phantoms. And in a world drowning in noise, that clarity is your lifeline. Fortune spins her wheel without warning, one moment lifting you to the heights of acclaim, the next plunging you into obscurity. Seneca, who witnessed emperors rise and fall, called this the wheel of fortune, a relentless cycle where today's darling becomes tomorrow's cautionary tale. Think of the celebrity who skyrockets to fame, only to crumble under scandal, or the lottery winner whose sudden wealth unravels their life. The Stoics didn't deny fortune's whims, they just refused to stake their worth on them. Seneca wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Not blind chance, but the collision of readiness and circumstance, the difference between a flash-in-the-pan star and an enduring artist. One depends on the wheel's spin, the other builds a foundation no gust of luck can topple." Consider the contrast between a viral sensation and a master craftsman. The TikTok star might amass millions of followers overnight, but without skill to sustain it, the spotlight fades as quickly as it arrived. Meanwhile, the jazz musician who spent decades honing her craft. She may never trend globally, but her art deepens with time, immune to algorithms or fickle tastes. The Stoics would argue that true stability comes from investing in what fortune can't seize: your discipline, your values, your ability to adapt. History's most resilient figures understood this. Beethoven composed his greatest symphonies after going deaf. Helen Keller, stripped of sight and hearing, became a towering voice for justice. Their triumphs weren't accidents, they were the fruits of relentless preparation meeting fractured circumstances. Seneca's wheel didn't break them because they weren't clinging to it. They were rooted in something sturdier, the unshakable belief that their worth wasn't tied to fortune's favor. So how do you define luck? Is it the random bounce of a basketball at the buzzer, or the thousands of hours spent practicing free throws until your muscles remember the arc? Is it stumbling into a dream job, or having polished your skills so when the door cracks open, you're ready to step through? The Stoic answer is clear: luck isn't something that happens to you. It's what happens through you when you've done the work to turn chance into choice. Next time you envy someone's overnight success, ask yourself, what unseen grind preceded it? And when fortune's wheel turns against you, remember, the drop is only dizzying if you've mistaken the ride for solid ground. The real win isn't staying atop the wheel. It's building legs that can walk steady no matter where it spins. Marcus Aurelius built an empire within himself, a fortress of thought so unshakable that even as he led armies and governed Rome, he carried a sanctuary no external chaos could breach. He called it his inner citadel, writing in Meditations, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful than your own soul." Picture it, a mental stronghold with walls made not of stone but of principles. Its gates don't lock out the world, they filter it, allowing only what serves your growth to enter. In an era obsessed with safe spaces, from noise-canceling headphones to curated social media feeds, the Stoic version stands apart. It's not about controlling your environment. It's about cultivating an interior so grounded that no environment can control you. Modern psychology echoes this in concepts like emotional regulation, but the Stoics took it further. Your inner citadel isn't a panic room for hiding from life's storms. It's a command center for navigating them. When Marcus faced betrayal, disease, or war, he didn't retreat. He returned to reason, to duty, to the core of who he was. Compare that to today's trend of mental health days spent doom-scrolling in pajamas, temporary relief. Maybe, but true peace isn't found in escaping reality. It's built by aligning with it. Here's how to construct yours. Start with a 5-minute mental retreat ritual. First, anchor in the body. Sit upright, feet grounded, hands resting, palms up. A posture of openness. Close your eyes and trace your breath, not to empty your mind, but to inhabit it fully. Next, invoke your principles. Whisper 3 truths you defend to the death. Maybe, I control my actions, not outcomes, or every obstacle is raw material. Then survey your walls. Imagine the past day's events as visitors knocking at your gate. The rude comment, a scrap of paper blown by wind, let it pass. The unfinished task, a messenger asking for direction, a sign at a time. Finally, reclaim your sovereignty. Visualize stepping into the citadel center, where a flame burns steady. That's your will, untouchable. This isn't escapism, it's remembering. The chaos outside hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has, because the ultimate safe space isn't a place at all. It's the unshakable knowing that no matter how fierce the storm, you're the keeper of your own calm. And unlike a trending hashtag or a pricey wellness retreat, this sanctuary is always open, always free, built brick by brick in the quiet moments you choose yourself. Cleans, the philosopher who succeeded Zeno as head of the Stoic school, didn't just teach wisdom, he lived it, one back-breaking bucket of water at a time. By day, he studied and lectured on virtue. By night, he hauled water for gardens and construction sites, earning barely enough to survive. When critics mocked him for manual labor, he replied, "I water plants so I can water minds." No hashtags, no virtue signaling, just the quiet dignity of action over image. In an era where social media conflates volume with value, Clean's life cuts through the noise. Philosophy isn't about polished speeches or performative outrage. It's about getting blisters for what you believe. Today's world thrives on "look at me" activism, grand gestures designed for applause rather than impact. A viral tweet condemning hunger gets thousands of retweets, while the neighbor quietly stocking a community fridge goes unnoticed. The Stoics would call this mismatch the paradox of performance. The louder the declaration, the weaker the devotion. Epictetus warned, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Think of the difference between a politician promising change and a nurse working double shifts in a pandemic. One trades in words, the other in sweat. Both matter, but only one moves needles. Here's the litmus test. When you witness injustice, does your response prioritize visibility or efficacy? Sharing a petition online might feel satisfying, but does it feed a single mouth? Clean's didn't lecture about the ethics of labor, he bent his back to it. Modern parallels exist. Consider the anonymous donors who pay off school lunch debts without press releases, or the volunteers rebuilding homes after disasters while influencers debate causes on podcasts. Impact doesn't need a spotlight to be real. Your challenge this week: replace one complaint with one concrete action. Frustrated by litter in your park? Spend 10 minutes filling a bag before and after photos required. Annoyed by workplace inequity? Mentor a junior colleague off the record. The goal isn't scale, it's sincerity. As Clean's proved, even the smallest deed, when rooted in principle, carries more weight than the loudest proclamation, because Stoicism was never about building a platform. It was about building character, one quiet, uncelebrated act at a time. Seneca once dropped a truth bomb that still echoes 2,000 years later. Life is long if you know how to use it. At first glance, that sounds paradoxical, especially in an era where we cram more into a day than our ancestors did in a week, yet still feel like we're racing against an invisible clock. But here's the twist: Seneca wasn't talking about adding hours to your life. He was talking about adding life to your hours. The average person will spend 11 years staring at screens, 7 months waiting in lines, and a full year scrolling through social media. That's not living. That's time laundering, taking the finite currency of your existence and washing it down the drain without even noticing. Consider the modern time wasters Seneca never saw coming. The endless scroll that turns 5 minutes of checking notifications into 50. The binge-watching marathons where you can't remember the plot by season 3 but feel oddly compelled to finish. The meetings that could have been emails, the gossip that fuels nothing but resentment, the obsessive refreshing of news feeds that leave you informed but exhausted. These aren't just distractions, they're death by 1,000 clicks. Seneca put it brutally: you're dying every day, not just in the final breath, but in the hundreds of small surrenders to triviality that eat away at your potential like acid. History's most prolific minds treated time like a non-renewable resource. Benjamin Franklin kept a meticulous daily schedule, carving out hours for learning, creation, and reflection. Marie Curie worked in a freezing shed to isolate radium, her fingers cracking from the cold because she refused to let discomfort dictate her progress. They didn't have more time than you, they just refused to waste it. The Stoics weren't productivity hackers, they were priority alchemists. They knew the secret: you don't need more time. You need fewer leaks. Here's the challenge: track your time for one day like a forensic accountant. Not just the big blocks, work, meals, sleep, but the fragments. The 20 minutes lost to indecision in the morning, the half-hour doom scroll before bed. Then ask, if this were my last year, would I still hand these moments to the void? The answer will likely terrify you, because the great tragedy isn't that life is short. It's that we pretend it isn't until it's too late. So what's one time sink you'll eliminate today? Not tomorrow, not next week, today. The clock's already ticking, but here's the good news: every second you reclaim is a tiny resurrection. And in those reclaimed moments, you'll find something extraordinary, a life that doesn't just pass but pulses. Imagine hugging your child, your partner, or your closest friend, really feeling their warmth, hearing their breath, noticing the way their smile crinkles their eyes while holding this thought in your mind: this could be the last time. That's the heart of Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of negative visualization. But here's what most people miss: it's not about dwelling on loss. It's about waking up to the sheer miracle of what you already have. Seneca put it in piercing terms: let us love as if one day we must hate, not because hatred is inevitable, but because love is fragile. The argument you had this morning, the irritation over mismatched socks, the silent treatment over something trivial, What if today's petty friction became the last memory you shared? History's most poignant moments often come from this razor's edge of awareness. When the philosopher John Locke nearly died in a shipwreck, his first thought wasn't for his possessions. It was for the friend he'd quarreled with days earlier. He survived, tracked the man down, and reconciled. The near loss didn't just teach him mortality, it taught him what was worth mourning. Modern psychology confirms this. Patients who have faced terminal diagnoses often speak of a strange gift, the ability to see ordinary moments as extraordinary. The morning coffee with their spouse, the laughter of their kids in the backyard, the mundane errands they once resented, all drenched in sudden, aching beauty. Try this today. Write a gratitude loss letter. Pick one person you love, maybe someone you've taken for granted or recently clashed with, and write as if they're already gone. Describe the way they laugh at bad jokes, how their hands gesture when they're excited, the quiet way they show up when you're hurting, then read it aloud. You'll feel something shift, a tightening in your chest, a sting behind your eyes. That's not grief, that's clarity. The Stoics weren't morbid, they were master alchemists. By staring loss in the face, they transformed ordinary love into something sacred. Now here's the twist. Don't give them the letter. Tuck it away. Let it simmer in your awareness. Because the goal isn't to make every moment a melodrama, it's to sand off the numbness of routine. Tomorrow, when that person leaves their dishes in the sink again, you'll have a choice: sigh in annoyance or remember the letter. One reaction drains you, the other turns a chore into a privilege. That's the magic of negative visualization. It doesn't just prepare you for loss, it rescues you from the far greater tragedy of never having fully noticed what you had while it was here. The Stoic sages weren't marble statues of perfection. They were human beings covered in sweat and scars, stumbling forward just like the rest of us. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's most revered teachers, put it bluntly: don't seek to have everything that happens happen as you wish, but wish for everything to happen as it actually does, and your life will go well. Notice what he didn't say: become unflappable overnight. The goal wasn't to reach some mythical state of unshakable calm, but to make progress, one deliberate choice at a time. Think of it like fitness. No one expects to deadlift 300 pounds on their first day at the gym, but showing up, gripping the bar, and adding 5 more pounds than last week. That's how strength builds. Consider Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who scribbled self-reproaches in his private journal. You're still unworthy of the philosopher's title. Or Seneca, who confessed to losing his temper despite decades of study. These weren't failures, they were proof the work never ends. Modern role models follow the same pattern. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson didn't wake up with his physique. He earned it through thousands of dawn workouts. Serena Williams didn't dominate tennis by waiting for flawless games. She embraced the grind of incremental improvement. Stoicism operates the same way. The sage isn't someone who never feels anger, fear, or doubt. They're the ones who have trained themselves to respond differently when those emotions hit. Here's the practice. Pick one Stoic principle to strengthen this week, like a muscle you're targeting at the gym. Maybe it's pausing 10 seconds before reacting to criticism, or writing down 3 things within your control each morning. Not a grand overhaul, just a single, repeatable action. The key: track it like a workout log. At day's end, jot a quick note. Today, I recognized that traffic jam wasn't mine to fix, and listened to an audiobook instead of fuming. Or I caught myself complaining, then reframed the situation as a chance to practice patience. Small, yes, but just as 5 push-ups today lead to 50 next year, these micro-shifts compound into unshakable resilience. The mirror of the sage isn't meant to shame you with reflections of where you fall short. It's a tool for measuring growth. When Epictetus said, progress, not perfection. He was handing you a permission slip to stumble, to course correct, and most of all, to keep showing up. Because the real measure of a Stoic isn't an untouched calm, but the willingness to dust yourself off and try again, as many times as it takes. Democritus, the ancient philosopher known as the Laughing One, roamed Greece chuckling at human folly while others scowled in self-importance. His signature question still cuts deep. Why do we take ourselves so seriously when the universe itself is made of atoms and void? Modern fragility would baffle him. Cancel culture, outrage over minor slights, the desperate curation of flawless online personas. Meanwhile, Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his private journal, "Soon you'll be dust or bones, a mere name at best, and even that is just a sound, an echo." Think about that the next time you're tempted to rage over a misspelled tweet or a coffee order gone wrong. History's wisest minds understood the power of self-deprecating humor. Benjamin Franklin published his own embarrassing faux pas under pseudonyms to model humility. Abraham Lincoln, facing brutal political cartoons depicting him as a gangly ape, displayed them in the White House with a grin. Contrast that with today's influencers issuing cease and desist letters over unflattering memes. The difference isn't skin thickness, it's perspective. When you can laugh at your own missteps, you drain them of their power to shame you. Here's the twist: your most embarrassing moments often become your greatest connectors. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability proves this. We bond over shared stumbles, not polished perfection. Think of the last time someone confessed a gaffe at a party. Didn't the room warm to them? The Stoics would nod knowingly. Ego insists you must never spill wine on your shirt at a dinner party. Wisdom replies, now you've given everyone permission to breathe. Your challenge: share an awkward story this week, not the rehearsed, humblebrag kind "oops, I tripped while donating to orphans," but a genuinely cringe-worthy flub. Maybe it's the time you called your boss Mom, or waved enthusiastically at a stranger who wasn't waving at you. Watch what happens. The laughter that follows isn't at your expense, it's an invitation. Because when you stop treating your ego like a china doll, you'll find the world was never out to break you. It was waiting for you to join the joke. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, left us a razor-sharp truth. Some things are up to us and some are not. At first glance, it seems simple until you realize how much of your exhaustion comes from blurring that line. Think of the energy wasted begging traffic to move faster, demanding coworkers read your mind, or raging at rain for ruining your picnic. These aren't just futile battles, they're rebellions against reality itself. The Stoic twist: the very act of fighting what you can't change is what steals your control. Freedom, Epictetus argued, isn't found in bending the world to your will, but in directing your will where it actually matters. The serenity prayer, adopted by recovery programs worldwide, echoes this ancient wisdom. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Notice the hierarchy. Serenity comes first, not because passivity is virtuous, but because clarity is power. A sailor doesn't waste energy shouting at the wind, she adjusts the sails. That's the paradox. Surrender isn't weakness, it's the precondition for effective action. Consider modern anxieties. The job applicant refreshing their inbox every 5 minutes, desperate for a response they can't force. Parent agonizing over their adult child's life choices, as if love could override agency. These aren't just worries, they're attempts to control the uncontrollable. Epictetus would call this the slavery of misplaced effort, chaining yourself to outcomes you'll never command. His remedy: freedom is the only worthy goal. Not freedom from hardship, but freedom within it, the unshakable knowing that your worth isn't tied to external validation. Here's the litmus test: make two lists. First, what's mine? Your effort, your attitude, your boundaries. Second, what's not? Others' opinions, past mistakes, market crashes. Now scan your mental bandwidth. How much of your stress lives in column 2? That's the weight you're free to drop, not by giving up, but by redirecting that energy where it can actually move needles. The entrepreneur who obsesses over competitors moves, burns out. The one who focuses on refining their product, they sleep well, regardless of the market's whims. So where are you fighting unwinnable battles? Is it the quest to make everyone like you? The need to rehash a decade-old regret? The illusion that happiness depends on some future milestone? Epictetus' dichotomy isn't just a philosophy, it's a liberation. When you stop straining against immovable forces, you discover something astonishing. The battles that remain are the only ones ever worth fighting. And in that focus lies a power no circumstance can touch. What if everything you've been taught about success is upside down? The Stoics threw a wrench into conventional wisdom with their radical claim: the only true good isn't wealth, fame, or even happiness, it's virtue. Not virtue as a vague moral ideal, but as the unwavering alignment between your actions and your deepest principles. Cicero, the Roman statesman who bridged philosophy and politics, captured this in a piercing paradox: the honorable is more advantageous than the advantageous. Let that sink in. In a world where winning often means cutting corners or sacrificing ethics for expediency, the Stoics dared to flip the script. Real advantage isn't found in what you gain, but in who you become in the process. Consider the modern obsession with outcomes at any cost: the athlete doping for gold, the executive fudging numbers for a bonus, the student cheating for straight A's. Short-term gains, absolutely, but the Stoics would ask, at what cost to your character? Virtue isn't just about doing the right thing when it's easy. It's about doing it when the stakes are high and no one's watching. Like a tree's roots growing strongest in harsh winds, integrity isn't proven in comfort, it's forged in temptation. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily as emperor. With absolute power, he could have silenced critics, enriched friends, or indulged whims. Instead, he wrote reminders to himself: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. The twist: virtue isn't self-sacrifice, it's self-interest of the highest order. Think of the businessman who refuses a shady deal, losing a client but gaining a reputation for trustworthiness that attracts better opportunities. Or the scientist who publishes failed experiments, advancing collective knowledge instead of chasing glory. These aren't noble losses, they're strategic wins played on a longer timeline. The Stoic summum bonum: the highest good isn't about rejecting success. It's about redefining it as something no external force can revoke. Here's your challenge: recall a recent crossroads where gain and integrity collided. Maybe it was pocketing extra change from a mistaken transaction, staying silent when a joke crossed the line, or exaggerating credentials on a resume. Now ask, what would the version of me I respect most have chosen? That gap between action and aspiration isn't guilt, it's your compass, because the Stoics weren't preaching perfection. They were offering a far more practical gift: the realization that every choice isn't just about what you get, but about the kind of person you're training yourself to be. And in that training lies a freedom no trophy can match: the freedom to look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. 34 mantras might feel like a whirlwind of wisdom, but here's the secret: they all orbit 3 unshakable themes: acceptance, action, and perspective. Acceptance isn't surrender, it's the art of distinguishing between what's yours to change and what's yours to release. Action isn't blind hustle, It's the deliberate choice to turn obstacles into fuel. And perspective, that's the cosmic zoom out, seeing setbacks not as personal affronts but as part of life's grand, messy tapestry. Together, they transform chaos from something to fear into something to train with, like a sparring partner that sharpens your reflexes instead of breaking your bones. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned adversity into his greatest teacher, left us with two words that distill it all: bear and forbear. Not just gritting your teeth through hardship, but knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. It's the balance between weathering the storm and adjusting your sails. Think of it as a life compass. When you're lost, it doesn't point north, it points inward, asking, can I change this? If yes, act. If no, accept. And in every case, step back and ask, how might this look a year from now? But here's the catch. Wisdom isn't a trophy to collect. It's a muscle to flex daily. So try this. Pick one mantra each morning. Maybe it's, the obstacle is the way, on a day crammed with hurdles, or Amor, Fati, when plans unravel. Write it on your hand, set it as your lock screen, let it echo in your mind like a heartbeat. These aren't just words, they're lenses, and the more you swap them in, the clearer the world becomes. Now, we turn it over to you. Which mantra cut through the noise? Was it Marcus Aurelius' reminder that you have power over your mind, not outside events, or Seneca's defiant, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity? Drop it in the comments, not just to share, but to solidify it in your own mind, because the Stoics knew something crucial: wisdom grows when passed hand to hand. So take these mantras, test them in the wild, and remember, chaos isn't your enemy. It's the whetstone against which you'll sharpen your best self. Now go bear and forbear. The world